Good evening, and welcome to the September 14th meeting of the Solon Board of Education. Mr. Buchanan, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Hickman.
Here.
Mrs. Glavin.
Here.
Mr. Patton.
Here.
Ms. Jones.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome all of our guests that are watching from home. This is our first opportunity for public comment. Mr. Bolden, I believe there are a few public comments.
Yes, there are. We have 3 public comments. The first comment we have is from Gino Scipione, and he is asked to please provide an update on the timing of in-person learning for our students. I would be interested in additional information on the board's determination of updating the current virtual learning program. Gino Scipione. The next one we have is from Mary Fredericks, and hers states, Dear Solon Board of Education members, I would like the following message to be addressed by the Board of Education at their next meeting on 14 September 2020. I am writing to express the need for Solon students to have the choice to return to school, especially for children in elementary school. Scientific and community-based evidence shows that 1, keeping schools closed is harming children mentally, developmentally, emotionally, and educationally. This has been outlined extensively by the CDC and the American Association of Pediatrics. Furthermore, this harm is not limited to children. Parents are struggling and suffering serious mental and financial strains due to the current policy. 2, case numbers in Cuyahoga County have been steadily declining for weeks now. 3, a recent study on outlining reopening guidelines from Harvard University concluded that Ohio was one of the few states in which it was deemed feasible to open schools, especially for elementary and middle school age. 4, young children do not spread the virus the same way as adults. Daycares throughout Ohio were open all summer, mostly filled with children of at-risk essential workers. Schools in Europe were open all June without affecting children or teachers. Summer camps were held all summer without outbreaks. In most European countries, schools have now opened at full capacity for the year, despite experiencing a second peak. In addition, it is logistically feasible to keep elementary school children and their teachers in smaller bubbles that do not interact amongst each other. Other Cuyahoga school districts are recognizing the above and are opening up, going against scientifically unfounded recommendations of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. I would like to request the school to follow this example and go back to their initial plan, which gave people a choice between in-person and online. Education and children's well-being are essential. An exemplary school district like Solon should be brave enough to critically evaluate the scientific evidence for themselves and to advocate for this goal. Yes, the virus is here, and it is not going anywhere anytime soon. We will have to learn how to live with it. People at risk need to take measures to protect themselves, but it is unfair to knowingly harm a subset of society that has no voice themselves while they are at minimal physical risk. Therefore, choice is crucial, especially for K-6 that are building the foundations of learning that will impact them for the rest of their lives. Best regards, Margie Fredericks. And then our third one. I wanted to express how much I appreciate that Solon has put the safety of its students, teachers, staff, and families first when they moved to virtual schooling. For my 10th grader, it has gone very well. Of course, we miss being at school, but clearly the risk is too great, and it makes sense that we have been at home. The teachers have done a great job, and since everyone is home, everyone is on an even playing field. I've noticed on social media there are a few parents that are very vocal about going back in person and ignoring science and medical recommendations. I'm hoping the board will continue to make decisions based on medical advice and not feel pressured by a few that aren't taking this seriously. If we aren't able to have more than a few people in a restaurant or have to live stream meetings, then a classroom with 20 children would not be safe. I've done a lot of research, and every pediatrician I can find advises that virtual school is the best choice right now. I can't imagine how difficult the decisions must be for school leaders. Thank you for putting safety and education first. Pam Salvaggio. What I wanted to say is that we have a specific C item about our return to school that will be addressing all 3 of these items as we go through it. So at the end, when we get to that C item, I will go over our plans and what we plan to be doing for a return to in-person schooling.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to, again, reiterate that because we are meeting virtually, These letters were submitted online through our email, and if you do have a comment with regard to this, or anything that the board discusses, or would like to address a comment to the board, please send your email to info@solinboe.org. Again, that is info@solinboe.org. I did want to mention that board members do receive and review the agenda and the accompanying explanation during the week prior to the Monday board meetings. Moving into the treasurer's report, item A1, approval of minutes. Recommended motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting from August 24th, 2020. Motion, please.
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Thomas.
Second.
Second by Ms. Jones. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, Mr. Buchanan, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes, thank you. Item A2, approval of bills. Recommended motion to approve the payment of bills totaling $33,166.65 as noted in enclosure A2.
So moved.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Heckman, second by Mr. Patton.
These are all security items. The main purchase items here are security items, external door signage, as well as a security film for our doorways.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes, thank you. Item A3, then and now certificate. Recommended motion to approve the following purchase order as a then and now certificate. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
Jones, second by Mrs. Thomas. Mr.
Yes, actually, I will cover this
Oh, you're
one.
going to do that one?
Back in 2017, we purchased our current mobile units. We had been leasing them, and we had decided to purchase those mobile units. What happened is the Orchard mobile units, when we purchased them, there was an overlap of time where there were rental fees that needed to be paid that weren't in the ending balance. And it just came to our attention that those rental fees needed to be paid, and so that is what this then and now is for.
Great, thank you. Are any other questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. That concludes our treasurer's report. Moving into the superintendent's report. Item B1, policies. Mr. Bolden?
Yes, this is the list of policies that we went over at the last meeting. We've had an opportunity, we went over them last meeting. You guys have had an opportunity to review them, to go through those. The one thing that I did want to make it a point about, because I did have a parent phone call about it. There was some confusion about religion in the curriculum, as well as religious expression or religious patriotic ceremonies and observations. These policies do not mean that we are bringing religion into the school or taking religion out. What these policies are in response to a law that was passed by the state that requires us to continue to do what we were doing before, which is not abridge students' personal religious freedoms, as well as not support them either. We are still a separate entity when it comes to these types of things. It's just we're not allowed to either support or denigrate any religion in any way. And I just wanted to make sure in those two particular instances
So there's
that was
nothing
clear.
really majorly different with this.
It's not majorly different. It's more of a wording thing that was in the law, and we needed to
Oftentimes
align
with
our
these,
policies.
that's a lot of what it is it just a
Correct.
change in wording that has to be approved?
That's correct.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments or concerns? Mr. Buchanan, would you call the roll, please?
Did we have a motion?
We don't have a
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry, we need a motion. We
That's
do.
my bad.
Moved by Mr. Patton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Heckman.
Okay.
And now we can take the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Candidate for graduation, item B2, recommended motion to approve Casey Bowling as a candidate for graduation, contingent upon her completion in meeting all state and local requirements for graduation. It is unusual but legal that a student completes their high school obligation earlier than their class. In this case, Casey Bowling has met her requirements by taking College Credit Plus courses during the summer. Therefore, she can be graduated. Motion, please. Mrs. Thomas,
Second.
second by Ms. Jones.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, this is something, it doesn't happen often, but we usually have several a year where there are students who want to graduate early, they've completed the requirements necessary to do it, and by board policy and state law, we are allowed to honor this. It just requires a board action to do so.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B3, Assistant to the Athletic Director, recommended motion to approve a contract between the Solon Board of Education and Cody Coley for the position of Assistant to the Athletic Director for the period of August 1st, 2020, and ending June 30th, 2022, as noted in enclosure B3. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Jones,
Second.
second by Mrs. Thomas. Mr. Bolden?
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, this is something that we actually have had for several years. It was filled by, actually, after Mark McGuire retired.
Right.
He did that. He did not opt to want to come back and do that, and we needed someone to do this. In addition to that, the competition requirements imposed by the Ohio Department of Health and the Ohio and the Governor's Office about how, and the Ohio High School Athletic Association, about all the things necessary for us to have in-person competition, requires a dedicated individual to help address these things. So what this job is doing is, it's not an assistant athletic director. It's important. It's an assistant to the athletic director. So they're really just basically, they're going to be Jim McQuaid's helper to help manage all of the administration, the scheduling, the distancing, the spacing, enforcement going on at the games, all of the things necessary for us to have in-person competition, as well as dealing with the complexities in the scheduling. It requires us to have a position of this nature.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B4, substitutes. Recommended motion to approve the following individuals as substitutes on an as-needed basis for the 2020-21 school year. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Heckman, second by Mr. Patton.
Yes, I would like to say we need substitutes. We need more substitutes.
Any more, huh?
And as we make that transition back to in-person learning, it's going to be more critical than ever that we have substitutes. As people are going out for illness or other reasons, we need to be able to have qualified, certified replacements to handle them. Because without substitute teachers, we're not going to be able to do school. So it's really important that if you know someone or you need anybody, please, the application is online. If you have a college degree or you're a certified educator and you can pass the background checks and go through that, we can get you in as a substitute. So please, if you can, come in.
Just to clarify, that you don't have to be a teaching, you don't have to have teaching credentials, correct?
You need to have a bachelor's
Just a
degree or
bachelor's
better.
degree. Thank you. Great, thanks. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B5, district transportation examinations. Recommended motion, a resolution to approve and appoint the following medical examiner to conduct and complete our bus driver examinations for the 2020-21 school year under OAC 3301-83-07, and that is the St. Vincent Occupational Health. This ensures that we've had appointed the proper medical authority to conduct examinations in compliance with Ohio Revised Code 4511.01, Section F. Motion, please. Moved by Mrs. Thomas.
Second.
Second by Ms. Jones.
This is just a standard operating thing where we have to approve St. Vincent's to handle all of our drug screenings and physicals that we do for our drivers, and that the board needs to approve that organization.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B6, non-district people activity permits. Recommended motion to approve non-district people activity permit contracts to the following individuals, and they are listed below. Motion, please. Moved by Mr. Patton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Heckman.
Yes, this is the first of two. Normally, these supplementals come on much later, but because of the delay in athletics, we had not put these on the board agenda yet. These represent our non-teaching supplementals, and then our next one will be our teaching supplementals. These are all for our fall sports that are now in full swing, and we actually have two events going on this night. We have girls soccer and girls JV soccer and boys. It's both girls. It's girls
JV girl.
Girls JV soccer is going on right now, and girls varsity soccer will be going on later this evening. And so these are our, again,
Great.
non-teaching coaches.
And there's nothing new here.
Nothing new, all the same positions. They're
It'll
just
be different
moving
people,
forward.
but
Great. Great. Good, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Buchanan, we call the roll, please.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Item B7, supplemental contracts. Recommend a motion to approve supplemental contracts to the following individuals, and they are listed below. We have a motion by Mrs. Thomas,
Second.
second by Ms. Jones.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, again, as I said, these are our teachers, these are our certified contracts for supplementals, and it represents the remainder of our fall sports.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Item B8, limited teacher contracts. Recommended motion to award limited teacher contracts to the following individuals for the 2020-21 school year, and they are noted in enclosure B8. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Heckman, second by Mr. Patton.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, any teacher that we have that was not that doesn't have a continuing contract and that is working for us this year, they get issued a limited contract every year, and it usually happens sometime around this time of year.
Just a fast question, Mr. Bolden. Those listed under the category of district means that they travel between several schools?
That is correct. If it says district in there, that means that those are teachers that are, they're either itinerant teachers that are working in multiple locations, or they're therapists that work in multiple buildings as they go through it. And we count those as district employees as opposed to a specific building that they're housed
Thank
in.
you so much.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Item B9, new hire. Recommended motion to hire the following individual as a teacher for the 2020-21 school year, and that name is listed below. May I motion, please? Moved by Ms. Jones, second by Mrs. Thomas.
Yeah, this is one of several new hires that we've had to add at Orchard in preparation for a return to school, to decrease our class size to safe numbers within the building as we prepare for a return to in-person instruction.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Item B10, tuition reimbursements. Recommended motion to approve tuition reimbursements to the following individuals, and they are listed. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Patton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Heckman.
Mrs. Glavin, these were previously approved, and they do meet our district criteria.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes, thank you. That concludes our business items. Moving into information items and other reports to the board. Item C1, Mr. Bolden.
Yes, the first one's really exciting. Never want to say business as usual because it's not, but we've come to expect this. We have 19 Solon High School seniors that were named National Merit Scholar semifinalists for 2021. It's an impressive number. There's many private schools that can count on one hand the number of kids that they get that are National Merit finalists, and we always number in the double digits every year for this. It's an exciting accomplishment, and it speaks to our community, it speaks to our families, our parents, our students' hard work, and our teachers' hard work. It's really exciting to do that. It really goes to show the hard work that they do. Now, these semifinalists are actually going to continue into the competition to become National Merit Scholar finalists. There's some additional requirements that they're going to have to fulfill in the coming months, and they have to attain, there's additional scores that they'll have to take to go on to the competition. It's just exciting for them. It's a real feather in their caps for their futures, and it speaks really strongly to the district as a whole.
Are those students that are commended, does that come out later?
Yes, it does.
I just remember there was usually another whole grouping. That's awesome. Thank you. Another week or so? Great, thank you. Well, I know we certainly congratulate all those students. That's an amazing an accomplishment, and we certainly are proud of all of our kids. Item C2, planning for the return to school. Mr. Bolden.
All right, so this is the one that everybody is watching at home waiting to hear.
I'm sure.
So earlier today, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health issued updated recommendations for schools to use in making return to in-person learning and participation decisions. It's a document that's available online. We'll be putting it on our website, and you can get it from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. It basically outlines multiple scenarios that districts use based on what the numbers are looking at and what the science is telling us for return to in-person learning. We just got it today. Okay? The guidance document is actually linked. One of the nice things about this document, and I encourage everybody to read it because we're going to be reading it, we're going to be continuing to read it today and into tomorrow. It actually links to published scientific, medical, and public health research from the Harvard Global Health Institute, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health, as well as the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Reports and other medical journals. So it's pretty well researched in a reference document that we're using to drive the return to school. One of the things about the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, the Ohio Department of Health, the CDC, all these organizations, as we are learning more, they are updating their guidance. And what we have always said that we would do is we would heed their guidance to help us drive in making our decisions. So this week, I'm meeting with my team. I'm meeting with building leaders. I'm meeting with our teachers, our educational association, to compare this updated guidance to our original reopening plan, to see if there's any adjustments that need to be made, any tweaks that need to be made, so that we can execute on the plan that we built this summer to give parents a choice to return to in-person or to continue to opt out. It is our goal to have that return happen sooner than the end of the 9 weeks. I know I say this at each one of our meetings, we can't move on a dime. There's a lot of things that have to happen from getting this document today to us having in-person learning. There is decisions that parents need to make. There are adjustments we need to make to food service and to transportation, because right now we have one type of transportation where we're transporting a small subset of our kids as well as transporting food to people's homes to go through that. And we're going to have to make adjustments to those things. And that all requires work for us to do. And we can't say, all right, we're back in school, and then tomorrow we're back in school. There's things that need to happen, and that's going to take several weeks to accomplish. Our goal is to announce the specific dates as well as the other information that parents need by the end of this week. So look at the end. Our parents should look for the end of this week for the specific dates of return and how we're going to stage that return. Again, I can't speak specifically about it, but I would say that based on the initial guidance of this document, our youngest kids can come back sooner than our older kids, but that does not preclude our older kids from coming back either. It's a process that we have to analyze and work through with our team to make sure that we're doing the safest thing possible. Overall, our return to school plan remains unchanged from the original plan that we put forth in July. There's nothing in this document which really should impede that from happening. We're going to let our families make the choice as to whether they could be in person or not be in person. It is absolutely, and it always has been our intention to bring our students back into our buildings. Obviously, because of the progression of the pandemic and the guidance from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, we had to press pause on that, but we are working in that process to bring that back. We announced last week that we would be announcing the cases as they go through, because that's the new requirement that goes on. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to still send information out to families to let them know if we have active cases and if we have people that are under quarantine, as is the requirement. Keep in mind that all along we've been readying our schools for our students to return to our classrooms. Our staff have been preparing our classrooms, our buses, our common areas with the necessary precautions we outlined for our return to in-school plans. Those include desk shields, distancing, sanitization products. All of those things have gone through. We're continuing to do those things, and we have been continuing to get all of that stuff in place as we've gone through. We work with the Cleveland Clinic, with university hospitals, as well as state and local public health orders and recommendations to make sure that our buildings are prepared and aligned with those things. Our staff has gone through training on protocols. Our main staff, we actually got outbreak and response contact tracing training for our main people. Our school environmental services have gone through training, as well as school food safety trainings have all been going on. And those procedures obviously are continuing to evolve as we go through. We're doing everything we can right now to get our students engaged in and participating in as many activities as possible. You know, one of the things that we said a couple of weeks ago was that we were going to start in-person sports and extracurricular activities as a precursor to a return to school. we're making good on that progress tonight with our very first games that are going on. Now, the important thing to understand about this is we still have about 30% of our students whose parents have opted for virtual learning through January at least. And we're anticipating that over the next several weeks, and again, we're going to be publishing a form for parents to fill out, there will be additional parents that may continue to opt out. We need to make adjustments to our classes and our instruction for that to come through. Yeah. And I think the important thing to understand about everything that's gone on, we know that virtual learning is not the most optimal instructional model. We know that in-person learning is what we need to do. I can say that where we are right now in virtual learning is bounds better than where we were several weeks ago. We know we still have issues that we need to overcome from a technical aspect and from an operational aspect, and we continue to work on those, and we continue to improve. At the PTA meeting last week, I called out specific parents who've been giving us really direct, clear feedback about what's working and what's not working. Our technology resource team is meeting sometimes daily to make adjustments and to give feedback to our teachers and our families to help them work through those issues, because we know that regardless of what happens, we are going to have virtual learning that's going to happen. We can come back in, let's say we come back in October 5th, or we come back in October 12th. We know that if cases increase and we get lots of positivity, we may have to go back out again. So regardless of what happens, we need to continue pushing that going through. And I think the final thing I want to say before you guys ask any questions or we have any additional discussion, I wanted to thank all of our families. I understand how hard this has been on our families. I understand how hard this has been on our teachers. The way our district is successful is through a partnership with our families. That partnership and us all working together for our students is how we're going to get through this thing. It's how we're going to fight it. It's how we're going to get back to in-person learning. It's about our families following safety protocols when they're not in school and when they're not here. It's what happens outside the school as much as it is what happens in school.
Exactly.
And we need this partnership with our families to make that happen. Okay, so that's what we have.
Go ahead, finish up.
And any questions that you guys have or statements that you needed to make?
John?
Well, yeah, I have one statement because I want to make sure people understand. Back in the day, everyone got a form. Form said, I like to send my child back to school, or I like to keep him or her home. Coming up here, we'll say in 2 weeks, we've decided to bring the kids back in. The individuals that selected to keep them at home do not have a choice to come back in.
That is
until
correct.
January.
Till January.
Right.
Because I heard you say there'll be forms coming out and people have a choice. Well, they don't have a choice. I mean, from that perspective,
John,
so I don't want to mislead anyone.
You make a very good point. If you have made a virtual commitment, that virtual commitment is through January.
Right.
Your first opportunity to switch back to in-person learning will happen in January. It's necessary for us to do that. We've assigned classes to specific kids based on those options that were taken, and it is very difficult for us to make those changes coming back. That being said, we said from the very beginning that you could opt out, but that opt-out would have to be for that semester commitment timeframe.
Right.
As we get closer to the end of the semester and we get ready to plan for our in-person learning starting in January, there will be another opportunity for parents to make an adjustment to their in-person or virtual learning
But
model.
on the flip side, if there are students who are virtually learning now and might have signed up to originally come back, they can still remain virtual.
That is correct. Anybody who has opted for virtual, that virtual option was a semester-long commitment.
Right, but if your original choice was to be in school and now you have decided that you want to be homeschooling or virtually learning, you can switch.
You
to
can
that.
absolutely opt out. And again, we're anticipating that we'll probably get another 10 to 15% of our kids or our families that will opt for that choice, taking us up to, right now, we're at about 30% of our kids that are virtual, so we're at about 70% capacity, and it is our anticipation that that will increase because there will be other parents that will make that choice to have virtual learning.
Well, I think I know what I'm hearing, and I think what a lot of board members are hearing, and you as an administrator are hearing too, is that it's the younger grades, it's K4, 5, 6, that, is the largest concern. It's the most difficult for parents who are at home, who might be working, who are not able to have childcare for their children. And, and again, as Mr. Bolden said, that will certainly be, the first group that, when that is available to be happening, that we would be looking at to do that. I think we all understand how difficult this has been for everyone, and we certainly would hope for everyone's patience to continue, along this road, because it is a moving target. There's so many moving pieces to go along with this. But I think that we are where that's going to be a reality very soon. And as Mr. Bolden said, hopefully that you will hear on that by Friday, so.
You will. I just want to emphasize, our goal is to bring the kids back. We want to bring them back as quickly, but as safely as possible. And we're following these new guidelines, as we said we've been doing it they've given us a vehicle to help us get our kids back in school. We might have to make a few changes to the physical plant and the way that we're doing a couple of things, but that's work that we can make tweaks to our plan to, and then we will be able to communicate to our families by Friday about what those specific dates are, and then additional communications about how do I opt my kids out, what are the specific implications. All that stuff will come online as we get closer to the actual opening
Which has
date.
been the plan all along. The plan from the very beginning was to be able to return to school and to be able to exercise the plan that we created in the summer.
That is correct.
With regard to choice.
As you heard in the public comments that we got at the beginning, and that's really representative of what we're getting, there are people who don't feel that it's safe to come to school, and there's people who really want their kids to come back to school, safe or not. They feel that this is the better choice for a myriad of reasons to go through it. That's going to be the case as we move forward. No matter what decision that we make, and when we give the specific dates about how we're going to return and what that process is going to be, there's going to be groups of individuals that will think, yes, that's just the right pace. There's another group of individuals who are going to say, you're not doing it fast enough, and there's going to be another group of individuals that say that you're doing it too fast. We're doing the best that we can to keep your kids safe, to keep them learning, and doing it in person if possible.
And Fred, just to clarify, when the students do start coming back here in the next couple weeks, the safety protocols we had put in place as far as mask wearing, the rules about the buses, siblings having to sit together, all of those things that were communicated back in the summer are still all in place, and none of that.
Right, and not only will those things not have changed, we will re-communicate those things
So as I
back
said, we'll
again, just to make
re-communicate
sure
those
that
things.
everybody understands exactly what those processes were that were going in place.
Very good.
Mr.
I'm
Hartman,
sure
anything
families
else?
will be relieved to know when they're getting the information. So by the
Right.
end of the week, they'll know a date.
By the end of the week, there will be a specific date about our return to school, and it is my belief that it will be sooner rather than later, and more than likely, if not for everybody, but for a lot of our kids, prior to the start of the school year, or prior to the start of the second quarter.
Well, I just want to say thank you to our staff. They've been working incredibly hard.
Incredibly hard.
Through all of this, from every person that works in the buildings, the custodians, the teachers, the administrators, and they are continuing to, and they'll be coming back into the buildings too. So I know Fred and your team, keeping those teachers and those staff, every member on the staff safe is also an utmost priority, and it's something that you've been really putting in the forefront, because that's critical.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. If you look at the science, our kids are not the ones that we should be worried about.
Right.
It's really our teachers. And if our teachers get sick and we don't have enough substitutes, then we're not going to be able to have school virtually or in person, depending on where those numbers go. So keeping our teachers safe is something that is absolutely critical. I would also say to you that in all the parents that I have spoken to, one of the universal things that they have said was how amazing the teachers have been, how supportive the
I've-
teachers have
I've
been,
seen
Comments too.
the personal connections that the teachers have been making virtually with their kids. People telling me stories about how their child was super shy in person, but via this virtual model, teachers have been able to draw them out and to build these relationships. So there are a lot of positive things that have been going on, and I think one of them, one of the shining positives, was how hard our staff is working to create a virtual learning environment in a very difficult situation.
Well, and I think how amenable people are to changing areas that we find that need to be tweaked a little bit, or things that didn't work out quite as well as they'd hoped it would, or, you know, whether it's a virtual model that can just make a few changes to when you come on, when you go off. That, you know, I think we've appreciated all the input from parents and from those who have stepped up to make recommendations and helped along the way, because as we've said 1,000 times, it's new to everyone. This is not something that anyone's done before. So, you know, in that regard, we have been very fortunate that we have a staff and administrators and certainly our families that have pulled together to try to make this as successful as it possibly can be.
I would say to you that a lot of people are saying, well, this district is doing this or this district is doing this. Every district's doing it a little bit differently. There's no right or wrong to this because there's no game plan. There's no plan for it. As of this week, about 60 to 70% of school districts are still remote. But I'm anticipating, as we are doing, many other districts will be coming online with in-person learning, especially given this new updated guidance.
Well, good. Any other board comments? Mrs. Siegel,
No, nothing.
Mrs. Thomas?
Public comment.
All right, then we'll move into public comment. This is our second opportunity. If Tammy has
There are
anything
no
additionally?
new public comments. Did you get in? No.
Great. All right, thank you. Seeing no other comments, we'll entertain a motion for an adjournment. Moved by Mrs. Thomas, second by Ms. Jones. Mr. Buchanan, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavine?
Yes. Thank you all for viewing on TV, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.